There are two main hypotheses as to the origins of the Etruscan civilization in the early Iron Age: autochthonous development in situ out of the Villanovan culture, or colonization of Italy from the Near East. An autochthonous population that diverged genetically was suggested as a possibility by Cavalli Sforza. Helmut Rix's classification of the Etruscan language in a proposed Ticenian language family reflects this ambiguity. He finds Etruscan on one hand genetically related to the Rhaetic language spoken in the Alps north of Etruria, suggesting autochthonous connections. But on the other hand, the Lemnian language found on the Lemnostela is closely related to Etruscan, entailing either Etruscan presence in Ticenian Lemnos, or Ticenian expansion westward to Etruria. In particular, the Lemnian language could have arrived in the Aegean Sea during the Late Bronze Age, when Mycenaean rulers recruited groups of mercenaries from Sicily, Sardinia and various parts of the Italian peninsula. The Etruscan language was of a different family from that of neighboring Italic and Celtic peoples, who spoke Indo-European languages. The latest mtDNA study suggests that the Etruscans appear to fall very close to a Neolithic population from Central Europe and to other Tuscan populations. This coincides with the Rhaetic language, which was spoken north of the Alps in the area of the Urnfield culture of Central Europe. The Villanovan culture branched from the Urnfield culture around 1100 BC, and thus Villanovan culture is ancestral to the Etruscan civilization. Autochthonous origin. Dionysius of Halicarnassus asserted, indeed, those probably come nearest to the truth who declare that the nation migrated from nowhere else but was native to the country, since it is found to be a very ancient nation and to agree with no other either in its language or in its manner of living. With this passage Dionysius launched the autochthonous theory, that the core element of the Etruscans, who spoke the Etruscan language, were of Terra itself, that is, on location for so long that they appeared to be the original or native inhabitants. They are therefore the owners of the Villanovan culture. Picking up this theme, Bonfanti states, the history of the Etruscan people extends from c. 1200 to c. 100 BC. Many sites of the chief Etruscan cities of historical times were continuously occupied from the Iron Age Villanovan period on. Much confusion would have been avoided if archaeologists had used the name Proto-Etruscan, for in fact the people did not appear suddenly, nor did they suddenly start to speak Etruscan. An additional elaboration conjectures that the Etruscans were an ethnic island of very ancient peoples isolated by the flood of Indo-European speakers. In 1942, the Italian historian Massimo Pallottino published a book entitled The Etruscans. Pallottino presented various hypotheses which gained wide acceptance in the archaeological community. He said no one would dream of asking where Italians or Frenchmen came from originally. It is the formation of the Italian and French nations that we study. He meant that the formation process for Etruscan civilization took place in the Etruria or nearby. Formulating a different point of view on the same evidence, Pallottino says, we must consider the concept Etruscan as attached to a nation that flourished in Etruria between the 8th and 1st centuries BC. We may discuss the provenance of each of these elements, but a more appropriate concept would be that of formation. The formative process of the nation can only have taken place on the territories of the Etruscans proper, and we are able to witness the final stages of this process. J.P. Mallory compares the Etruscans to other remnant non-Indo-European Central Mediterranean populations, such as the Basques of the Iberian Peninsula and southern France, who absorbed the art styles and alphabet of their Greek neighbors. Anatolian origin. Certain Greek and Roman authors saw the presence of the Etruscans in Italy as a historical problem, since they differed from the other civilizations in the area. In Greco-Roman mythology, Aeneas was a Trojan hero, the son of Prince Anchises and the goddess Venus. His father was also the second cousin of King Priam of Troy. The journey of Aeneas from Troy, which led to the founding of the city of Rome, is recounted in Virgil's Aeneid, where the historicity of the Aeneas legend is employed to flatter the Emperor Augustus. Romulus and Remus, appearing in Roman mythology as the traditional founders of Rome, were of Eastern origin. Their grandfather Numitor and his brother Amulius were alleged to be descendants of fugitives from Troy. Herodotus records the legend that the Etruscans came from Lydia in Asia Minor, modern Turkey. This is their story. Their king divided the people into two groups, and made them draw lots, so that the one group should remain and the other leave the country. He himself was to be the head of those who drew the lot to remain there, and his son, whose name was Tyrrhenus, of those who departed. They came to the Umbra Sea, where they founded cities and have lived ever since. They no longer called themselves Lydians, but Tyrrhenians, after the name of the king's son who had led him there. The classic scholar Michael Grant commented on this story, writing that it is based on erroneous etymologies. Like many other traditions about the origins of fringe peoples of the Greek world, Grant writes there is evidence that the Etruscans themselves spread it to make their trading easier in Asia Minor when many cities in Asia Minor, and the Etruscans themselves, were at war with the Greeks. However, the Greek historian Dionysius of Halicarnassus objected that the Tyrrhenian culture and language shared nothing with the Lydian. He stated, "For this reason, therefore, I am persuaded that the Pelasgians are a different people from the Tyrrhenians. And I do not believe, either, that the Tyrrhenians were a colony of the Lydians, for they do not use the same language as the latter. Nor can it be alleged that, though they no longer speak a similar tongue, they still retained some other indications of their mother country. For they neither worship the same gods as the Lydians nor make use of similar laws or institutions. But in these very respects they differ more from the Lydians than from the Pelasgians." Etruscan origins and the Sea Peoples. The Etruscans or Tyrrhenians may have been one of the sea peoples of the 13th–14th century BC. If Massimo Pallottino's assimilation of the Teresh of Egyptian inscriptions with Tyrrhenoi is correct, there is no further evidence to connect the sea peoples to the Etruscans. The Etruscan autonym Rasna does not lend itself to the Tyrrhenian derivation. The Etruscan civilization has been studied, and the language partly deciphered. It has variants and representatives in Aegean inscriptions, but these may well be from travelers or colonists of Etruscans during their seafaring period before Rome destroyed their political and military power. In the 6th to 5th centuries BC, the word Tyrrhenians was referred specifically to the Etruscans, for whom the Tyrrhenian Sea is named. According to Strabo, in Pindar, the Tizanoi appear grouped with the Carthaginians as a threat to Magna Graecia. I entreat you, son of Cronus, grant that the battle shouts of the Carthaginians and Etruscans stay quietly at home, now that they have seen their arrogance bring lamentation to their ships off Cumae. Thucydides mentions them together with the Pelasgians and associates them with Lemnian pirates and with the pre-Greek population of Attica. Lemnos remained relatively free of Greek influence up to Hellenistic times, and interestingly, the Lemnos stela of the 6th century BC is inscribed with a language very similar to Etruscan. This has led to the postulation of a Tyrrhenian language group comprising Etruscan, Lemnian and Rhaetic. There is thus evidence that there was indeed at least a linguistic relationship between the Lemnians and the Etruscans. The circumstances of this are disputed. A majority of scholars, at least in Italy, would ascribe Aegean Tyrrhenians to the Etruscan expansion from the 8th to 6th centuries, putting the homeland of the Etruscans in Italy and the Alps particularly because of their relation to the Alpine Rhaetic population. Adherents of this latter school of thought point to the legend of Lydian origin of the Etruscans referred to by Herodotus, and the statement of Livy that the Rhaetians were Etruscans driven into the mountains by the invading Gauls. Critics of this theory point to the very scanty evidence of a linguistic relationship of Etruscan with Indo-European, let alone Anatolian in particular, and to Dionysius of Halicarnassus, who decidedly argues against an Etruscan-Lydian relationship. However, the Indo-European Lydian language is first attested some time after the Tyrrhenian migrants are said to have left for Italy.